If you have come to see future God of War weapons, you're in the right place. Welcome God of War fans, my name is Shane Static, and today we are taking a look at future God of War weapons if or when we get to Egyptian mythology. So if or when we get to Egyptian mythology, what weapons will we see and what gods are going to be holding them? Let's find out. So first up on this list of weapons from Egyptian mythology is from the sun god and high god, Ra. So what weapon will Ra have if we get to Egyptian mythology in God of War? Let's take a closer look. So the Eye of Ra is one of the most recognizable symbols in Egyptian mythology. Not to be mistaken for the Eye of Horus, which is very similar. So the easiest way to tell them apart, or at least for me, is that the Eye of Ra's eye, or the pupil, is black, and the Eye of Horus is either hollow or white. At least that's how it looks to me. What I found very interesting is that the Eye of Ra is actually considered a counterpart, in that a feminine counterpart, to the sun god Ra himself. So there are many other deities in Egyptian mythology that have kind of been associated with the Eye of Ra, such as Bastet and Mut. Hopefully I'm pronouncing that halfway correctly. But the one that's the most ferocious and the one that actually makes the most sense to me is Sekhmet, which is almost given to her as a sort of title. Basically, Ra created Sekhmet for one purpose, and pretty much one purpose only: to make humanity suffer by disobeying him or his laws. But what kind of power would it have if we have it in the God of War universe? So this is what I'm thinking. So the Eye of Ra will kind of be just that, an eye. Kind of like Mimir's eyes used for realm travel, but the Eye of Ra is going to be a little bit different. I think we can use the Eye of Ra as kind of like a weapon, and a very powerful one at that. And I think it will be able to control Sekhmet herself, or whether or not we'll be able to use her as kind of like a weapon during our playthroughs, or just kind of control her to take her down during a boss fight, which would be pretty freaking cool, and I kind of like that idea a little better. The Eye of Ra will for sure be a future God of War weapon to get our hands on. So since we're talking about Sekhmet so much, let's talk about her next, and what kind of future weapons she would bring to the God of War series. So Sekhmet is the most recognizable, with the head of a lion is the god of chaos, plague, war, and healing. Yeah, that's an interesting combination of being the god of, but I digress. So with lack of better words, Sekhmet is probably going to be a complete badass, and someone I definitely want to see in the God of War series in the future. And she's kind of slightly complex, but we'll get into that a little later. So like said before, Sekhmet is mostly associated with the Eye of Ra and pretty much has one purpose: to make an example of humanity when they disobeyed Ra and his laws, which has happened before. So one day, Ra noticed that the humans of Egypt were not following his laws and almost disrespecting him. So what he did? Set out Sekhmet to make an example of them. But before long, she became completely blood drunk, and not even Ra himself could control her. But to subdue her and to stop her killing basically everybody, Ra poured a metric ton of beer and pomegranate juice into the river Nile. So why did Ra do this? To make the Nile River look like blood. So Sekhmet started drinking the water from the Nile and became completely and absolutely obliterated drunk, and passed out for 3 days. But when she awoke, her bloodlust had gone and she returned to her normal state. So it worked. Okay, once again, Sekhmet is a badass. But what weapons would she bring to the God of War series in the future? So in Assassin's Creed Origins, they gave Sekhmet a spear. But in mythology, when I'm digging a little bit, I found another weapon entirely that she's more well known for. One set of weapons that I noticed that she carried a lot and is known for is her 7 arrows. But these arrows are very special. They were made to pierce the hearts of humans. So whether they are magical or she is just an extremely skilled archer, they would come very useful, especially in her hands of our beautiful boy. One other kind of weapons that I kept seeing Sekhmet with were knives, daggers, and kind of melee weapons kind of like that. But it was also kind of hard to get by the Buffy the Vampire Slayer lore to find out a little bit more about this. So it is possible that she might have some daggers or knives or something like that if we see her in future God of War games. So the next god or goddess from Egyptian mythology that I want to talk about for future God of War weapons is Bast or Bastet, which actually has a pretty close relationship with Sekhmet. Stay tuned. So right quick, I just wanted to bring up Raised Energy by Rep Sports. I am an ambassador for the brand, and to be completely honest, I really do love their stuff, especially their energy drinks, which have 0 sugars, 0 carbs, 0 artificial dyes, and there is absolutely no crash whatsoever. Have you ever had an energy drink and after you're just jittery and still can't focus on what you're doing? Well, my favorite part about Raise is that it does not give you the jitters, but makes you focus and controlled. You have the energy you are looking for and the mental focus that most energy drinks lack pretty hard. Actually, as we speak, I'm actually drinking a Galaxy Burst, and it tastes friggin' awesome. And I love all their other products too, like their pre-workout, because I'm getting a little chunky, but that's besides the point. Their Raise on the go if I don't want a carbonated beverage. Their Sleep formula, which is awesome because I don't sleep very well pretty much my entire life, and it helps me really get to sleep. So if you'd like to try some for yourself, there's a link in the description to Rep Sports page. But how about save some money as well? At checkout, use my promo code SHAYNE, SHAYNE, and save 15% off your total purchase. So give Raise a try when you're looking for that kick in your ass, whether you are an athlete, a gamer, or just someone to look to wake up in the morning or get through the rest of your day. Okay, back to the video. So Bast or Bastet is the goddess most associated with fertility, childbirth, the home, and most of all, cats. And is mostly seen with the head of a lioness in early Egyptian mythology, and later on, the head of a house cat. Which kind of leads me into Bastet's association with Sekhmet. So Bastet and Sekhmet are kind of the same deity, both being associated with the Eye of Ra, and both deities are found with the lioness head. So Bastet and Sekhmet are actually kind of the same deity in Egyptian mythology from what I understand. So when Ra becomes pissy with humanity and wants to unleash his fury on them, he actually takes Bastet and turns her into Sekhmet. Think of it kind of like Bruce Banner and the Hulk. So Bruce Banner is Bastet and the Hulk is obviously Sekhmet. So this is kind of a way to compare them. So what kind of weaponry does Bastet have from Egyptian mythology that we could see in the God of War series? Well, from all my research, I really couldn't find a typical weapon that Bastet wielded besides kind of like a scepter. But many other deities wielded a scepter to show their power. But there was one item that I constantly saw Bastet with that could see its way into the God of War series, and that is the sistrum. So the sistrum is an ancient Egyptian instrument that was shaken to make noise and was used by humans during ceremonies whenever they were about to come into the presence of a god or another deity. I couldn't find a ton of information why Bastet wielded a sistrum, but the only real big reason I could find was that when humans would worship her, they would actually use a sistrum to kind of, get in touch with her. Only thing I could really find. So kind of like the Eye of Ra idea, wouldn't it be really cool to see kind of like a musical instrument? Like maybe have Kratos and Atreus call on like a flock or pride. Yeah, pride of lions, kind of like we summoned the wolves and like the crows in the last game, but non-magical. I think it would be pretty cool. So the last god I want to talk about from Egyptian mythology for future God of War weapons, and has a ton of associations with many different types of weapons, is Horus. So if you know even just a little bit about Egyptian mythology, you should recognize Horus pretty easily. Yeah, he kind of looks a lot like Ra, only without the sun, this thing. Kind of like right here. So Horus is the son of Osiris, the god of the underworld. And yes, Osiris is the god of the underworld and not Anubis, but that's a discussion for a whole nother day. And the goddess Isis. And he is also considered the god of the sky and a god of war. Yes, there are a lot of gods in Egyptian mythology that are considered a god of war, but that's besides the point. So Horus is actually the rightful ruler of Egypt instead of his uncle Seth, who stole the throne from Osiris. But once again, a discussion possibly for another day. So over the years and years, Horus had fought Seth for the throne of Egypt and can be seen with a spear, shield, mace, ton of other weapons. And I assume being a god of war, you'd be the master of many different types of weapons, so it kind of makes sense. But the weapon that he was most associated with was his spear, which thanks to the movie Gods of Egypt kept popping up in my search, but yeah. So the spear in Egyptian mythology actually dates back all the way back to when Horus and Seth were competing for the throne of Egypt. They were both in hippopotamus form, and yes, many of the gods in Egyptian mythology could shapeshift and did so very frequently. And Horus tried to kill Seth with his spear, but for some reason, his mother Isis, being Seth's sister, stopped him. This is the most prominent story I could find with Horus' spear, and I couldn't find much else, so I am not very sure if it holds some type of hidden power, kind of like Mjolnir and thunder and lightning, kind of like, yeah, this thing right here. But coming from a god of war, it has to be very powerful. So which weapon was your favorite? Or did I not even discuss your favorite at all? Please tell me in the comments down below, and let's discuss it. My name is Shane Static, and I'll see you guys next time. Take care.